Hello everyone. We're going to give a training, and this isn't really a product training on any particular LifeWise product. There are a couple of LifeWise products that do contain peptides, and we'll talk about those at the very end. But today is more an in general training on peptides, and you're going to learn some truth tonight, not just about the history of peptides, but I'm going to cover 5 of the most common peptide questions I've gotten over the last, probably 2 months or so. What are peptides? What's the difference between a protein, an amino acid, and a peptide? A little bit of the history of peptides. That's not an FAQ, but I threw that in there because it would help. Are peptides bioavailable? That's another question I get all the time. And are peptides safe? So those are the main 4 or 5 questions we're going to cover in tonight's training. What are peptides? It sounds like a really complex word. It sounds like a really cool word. People have been flashing it around recently. You guys, peptides, it's super simple. Peptides are proteins. They're protein chains. So if you don't know what proteins are made out of, they're made out of amino acids. And a peptide is nothing more than an amino acid chain of 2 amino acids up to about 200 amino acids. If you get more than that, it's no longer a peptide, it's a protein. So we have some proteins in our body, like certain enzymes, that are quite large in their amino acid chains, and so they're kind of classified as an enzyme, and they perform a very specific function similar to peptides that also perform very specific functions, but these are nothing more than protein or specifically amino acid chains, okay? So don't think that peptide is some newly discovered fancy little thing out there. It's kind of similar to, for example, what are triglycerides? Well, triglycerides are fat. They're basically the fats that your body consumes, like butter, cheeses, eggs, things like that, and breaks them down into triglycerides. And then your body then further digests them and converts them to energy. Well, when you eat protein, your body has these proteolytic enzymes, pancreatine, chymotrypsin, peptidase, all of these different enzymes that break down these proteins and convert them to amino acids. Your body will then take those amino acids and build peptides out of them. One thing you should understand about a peptide is that they are specific command molecules. They perform very specific functions in your body. Now, they are discovering some peptides that have multiple functions. For example, PT141. It's a peptide that not only is great for women in alleviating hot flashes and night sweats and things like that, but they're also finding out that PT141 can actually help with erectile dysfunction in men. We do know some specifics, not super details, but science is still investigating as to why PT141 can have dual effects. The majority of peptides, for what we know today anyway, have specific effects. Unlike herbal medicine, where herbs like help nourish your body, help feed the body, help strengthen the body so that the body can then produce and perform specific functions, produce peptides and things like that. Peptides are not like these healing, well, some are there for healing. What's the best word to describe it? Nutrients, I guess, is the word I'm looking for. They're not nutrients. They are command molecules. They command your body to perform a specific function based on what the command signal is from that peptide, all right? I try to keep things really simple as I explain what they are. But I can't get any more simple than stating that a peptide is nothing more than a chain, a small chain of amino acids. All right. Can't get easier than that. Another question I get is, well, what's the difference between proteins and peptides? I think I kind of already answered that, but peptides are a form of protein because it's what protein gets broken down into. Protein that you eat, like from meats, from fish, from your protein shakes that you take in the morning, those all get broken down into amino acids, okay? And then amino acids make up peptides. Your body then uses those amino acids to produce peptides. Now, it's almost unheard of to say that you are peptide deficient, except, well, it used to be. But now we are finding out that the body does stop producing certain peptides for specific reasons. For example, let's look at type 1 diabetes. When your islets of Langerhans in your pancreas are destroyed and your body can no longer produce insulin, then you become insulin deficient. Insulin is a type of peptide. And so you must intravenously, so injecting, take insulin. You can't orally take insulin. We'll talk about the reasons why later. But you have to inject insulin in order for your body to be able to process carbohydrates. Because insulin is that peptide that tells your body what to do with carbohydrates. All right? And there are other peptides that we're finding out decrease, or the production of them decrease as we age. However, if you continue to ingest high quantity and high quality proteins, it has been found that your body can continue to produce a majority of the peptides that it needs to live a long and healthy life. It's one of the reasons why I believe we're seeing so many degenerative diseases in our societies, because our protein intake is lacking, because we are now a carbohydrate-based society. I would love to say we are a fat-based society, but we're not. Most of us don't consume fats, with the exception of bad fats, the unsaturated fats, the vegetable oils, all of that stuff is way higher than we should be consuming. But our saturated fat intake, like in the form of animal fats, coconut oil and palm oil, those are the only vegetarian saturated fats out there, is way lower than when it used to be, because we've been taught that like animal food is bad for us. And so the majority of your processed and packaged food, which is what you guys are eating a majority of the time every day, are mostly carbohydrate based, and we're not getting a lot of high quality proteins in our diet. And it's not just high quality proteins in our diet. It's high quality proteins that you need to take at the right time. And that is not always the morning or afternoon. In fact, high quality proteins a lot of the time should be consumed before you go to bed, like in your evening meal, because your body takes those proteins, breaks those down into amino acids, and as you sleep, you produce a ton of peptides while you're sleeping. So we'll get into that a little bit later about when is the best time to take proteins and things to help your body produce more peptides. But just know that you can produce a majority of the peptides you need to continue living, which is why you're still alive today, because your body produces peptides. We first discovered that peptides were kind of a separate category from amino acids back in the early 1920s. In fact, I want to say it was 1918, somewhere around there. Researchers discovered one of the first peptides in our body, and that was insulin. They realized that insulin is not a true protein, that it was smaller than a protein, but it was more than just an amino acid. We had discovered by that time about 17, 18 different amino acids, and we noticed that insulin was an amino acid chain, more than just a simple amino acid. And through various trials, by about 1923, we discovered that insulin was necessary for us to live, that our bodies could not survive without this particular peptide. And it was by 1923, we had synthetically made insulin. We were able to, well, back then it was made actually through the extraction process from dog and cow pancreases. Okay, so bovine and dog pancreases. We've been able to synthetically produce it since then, and it opened up a whole new world of scientific discovery, and that was learning that there are literally, now we've learned that there are thousands of peptides in our body. Our body produces literally thousands of different peptides that perform a myriad of command functions in our body. Cool thing is that we can now synthetically make peptides. Whether they're naturally extracted or synthetic, it doesn't really matter. Again, peptides are these command type molecules that tell your body specifically what to do. I'm going to give you a few other examples. Everybody knows what oxytocin is, right? Oxytocin is also a peptide that kind of commands your body to produce other specific hormones that make you happy and make you feel good. So oxytocin is a wonderful peptide. Serotonin is also one of these peptide hormones that, when in balance, can help us feel good. When it's low, we kind of feel depressed and things like that. So there's all these cool peptides in our body that continually make us feel good, make us feel happy, make us feel bad, depending on what the peptide does. And by the way, for about 30, 40 years after we discovered peptides, science was mainly focused on peptides discovered within the human body. But it wasn't until the mid-1950s that something way cool happened, as we discovered that there were arachnid peptides and peptides in snake venom and peptides in sea urchins and things like that. Certain peptides that were poisonous, certain peptides that could have amazing anti-inflammatory functions in the human body. And we discovered that peptides were everywhere in nature and not just in humans. And nowadays, by the way, a lot of the peptides that are found in your skin care creams and cosmetics actually come from those animal peptides. For example, we discovered that there is a particular peptide in snake venom, in cobra venom. One of the things it does is it causes severe inflammation and freezes up like your spinal column and things like that. It literally paralyzes you, right? Well, we can take small quantities of that peptide, put it in a skincare cream, and it freezes up your muscles in your face, like instantly eliminating wrinkles and things like that. And it is a cool peptide, and it's a sign of things to come at LifeWise. So anyway, I won't say too much more about that right now in today's conversation. But there are some really cool peptides out there that can do amazing things. Now, most of these peptides are used, again, in cosmetics and in drug applications, and they are all either topically applied or injected. And here's why. Getting to the next question. Are peptides bioavailable? You guys, the resounding answer is, are they orally bioavailable? No. Okay? I need you guys to hear me and hear me clearly on this. If you try to swallow a peptide, let's go back to the very beginning. What is a peptide? It's an amino acid chain. If you take lots of amino acid chains, you're building a protein. What happens to proteins when you swallow them? They're digested, right? You have proteolytic enzymes or protein digestive enzymes in your GI tract that break proteins down to what? They break them down to amino acids. So if you've got a company out there saying, hey, we're selling peptides, and you swallow them, you just flushed your money down the toilet. Because look, the body may build peptides from those amino acids, but let's say you were to swallow PT141 and it got broken down into amino acids. There's no study, no guarantee showing that those amino acids will then rebuild PT141 once it gets in the body. In fact, those amino acids might go towards building insulin. They might go towards building oxytocin. They might just go towards building muscle mass. I mean, again, muscles are built from amino acids. Red blood cells are built from amino acids. Basically, any meat or solid in your body, including your white blood cells, are built from amino acids. So we don't know where those amino acids are going to be used. So by ingesting PT141, it would do you no good and you just spent a bunch of money. This is why you go to your doctor for peptide therapy, because you have to inject it. Now, I mentioned skincare use. Yes, there are topical applications for peptides. So you can transdermally absorb peptides, you can inject peptides, and we have discovered that the oral mucosa, the buccal lining, buccal, depending on if you're from Europe or the United States, you can absorb peptides via the oral mucosa. Okay. But as soon as because there's no proteolytic enzymes in your mouth. All right. You have L. salivarius, and you have amylase, you have carbohydrate digestive enzymes in your saliva, but you don't have protein digestive enzymes in your saliva. So you cannot break down and destroy a peptide as long as it stays in your mouth. But the moment you swallow it and it hits the lower portions of your stomach where the pancreatine and everything exist, you will digest your peptide, okay? But you can inject it, you can do a patch, you could do a strip, or you could apply it cosmetically if it had some type of transdermal delivery technology that bonded the peptide to it. So no, they are not orally bioavailable, but yes, they are bioavailable based on one of those 4 delivery mechanisms that I talked about. All right. So yes, if anyone tells you that they're selling a peptide and it's something that you swallow in the form of a shake or take in the form of a capsule or pill, run away, guys. It's hogwash. They don't know what they're talking about. Now, I will admit that there are some recent studies on pegylation of peptides. So people are trying to figure out a way to orally ingest peptides. But guys, polyethylene glycol is not the answer. What polyethylene glycol does is it destroys your body's ability to process protein for that moment that the polyethylene glycol is in your stomach. Why would you want to do that? First and foremost, polyethylene glycol, guys, is one of the ingredients. It's a main ingredient that's used in radiator fluid. And you all know what happens to dogs when they drink radiator fluid. Well, maybe the same thing will happen to you too if you ingest too much radiator fluid, all right? Polyethylene glycol has been bonded with some peptides, and the polyethylene glycol destroys the body's ability to digest proteins so that the peptide will then enter your small intestine and possibly be absorbed. Most peptides are even too large of an amino acid chain to be taken up through the small intestine, through the microvilli in the small intestine. So even if you had a polyethylene glycol lined peptide and it inhibited your body's ability to digest the protein, it still is most likely too large to be absorbed into the bloodstream via your intestinal lining. And there's studies that prove that. So again, if anyone tells you that they're selling a peptide and you're supposed to orally ingest it, run like the wind, all right? Are peptides safe? Actually, for the most part, yes, they are. And this is where there's a lot of debate with the FDA right now, because there are so many peptides that are available from like your doctor or your naturopathic doctor. These peptides are mostly synthetically made, and so the FDA just went ahead and classified them as a drug. The FDA is a regulatory body. It is not a law-making body. And so the halt on making peptides drugs has stopped because the FDA was just out there randomly classifying every peptide as a drug, and yet that has to go through Congress. In order to make something a drug, you have to have a law stating or a legal document stating that it's a drug. The FDA can only regulate existing laws. They can't make laws. Unfortunately, BPC 157, PT 141, TB 500, these were already classified as drugs, so they're kind of grandfathered in. But there's thousands of peptides out there, you guys, that aren't classified as drugs yet, and cannot unless somebody passes a law stating that they are. Because for the most part, peptides are safe because they're already in your body. You just have to kind of know how much to take. But even in large doses, they're showing that there's really no side effects, because what are they? Peptides are amino acid chains. There are people that take copious amounts of amino acids like arginine and citrulline and glutamine and glycine. And even in 20, 30, 40 gram doses, amino acids aren't harmful, because your body just uses them as building blocks to build other things. If you inject too many peptides, your body just breaks them down to amino acids. It'll do what it needs to do, and then if there's any left over, it breaks them back down to amino acids again. So it's really cool how safe peptides are. So yeah, there's virtually no side effects. They're safe because your body breaks them down to amino acids. So hopefully I answered that question. Now, does LifeWise use peptides? Currently, yes, we do. We have 2 peptides. And again, all of the peptides that we use are in the oral dissolving strips for buccal absorption. GMI, Ganoderma microsporum immunomodulatory peptide. So GMI peptide is one that's used in chilled. I've already trained about that one. 22 patents, 47 published peer-reviewed clinical studies, another 146, 47 ongoing clinical studies right now. It's an amazing peptide. Super cool. L-ergothioneine. L-ergothioneine is kind of borderline. Is it amino acid? Is it peptide? It is a long chain peptide that is more than just one amino acid. And therefore, I call it a peptide. Even though you'll find in scientific reports, some people calling it an amino acid, some people call it a peptide, because it's kind of in between, all right? But we use that in the radiance, and it's got multiple clinical studies. I already mentioned that it's a command molecule that commands your telomerase enzymes to activate, help protecting your telomeres. It commands your body to produce more collagen. It's got all sorts of anti-aging properties that are super cool about and it's a patented one. It's called Ergovita. We use a very specific patented L-ergothioneine molecule. Now, in the future, yes, I already have formulated and finished, and they are being produced right now. This is not an announcement. This is not the official announcement or training, but I think all of you have already heard the rumors. In production right now are 2 new skincare items that also use some really cool peptides. In fact, they are peptide-based skincare items. When you read the ingredients on these items, you will see that the majority, the largest ingredients, the ingredients that are written first are peptides. Unlike other companies that use like aloe vera and a whole bunch of gunk and garbage and oils as their main ingredients, and then all the beneficial ingredients are written at the very last, our main ingredient is a peptide. In our 2 new skincare creams coming out. So I'll train about those later. It might be not next week, but the week after, but you will be trained on them before they are launched. All right. Also, we will be producing a new oral strip that will also contain another peptide that will help balance your glucose levels. It will be part of the Wise Weight Management program that we will be launching also for the new year. But just know that we will and will continue. We already have used peptides in Shield and Radiance, and we will continue to use peptides because they are beneficial. But all of the peptides we use will either be topical or buccal absorption because we can't sell an injection. You have to go to your doctor for that, and we will never do a peptide that you have to orally ingest because that's just stupid. If anybody's doing that, then they don't know anything about science. So hopefully you've learned a little bit about what peptides are, where they come from, are they safe, the history of peptides. We've covered all the topics tonight. So thank you for your time. For those of you who joined me, and share this information. Let's get the word out there about peptides. Let's get the truth out there about peptides. Thanks for joining tonight. Have a good evening.